Getting started with our conservation webinar today. I'm Casey Sheely, National Technology Specialist for the NRCS West National Technology Support Center in Portland, Oregon. Eric Fleming is today's webinar moderator. Eric is an agricultural engineer at the East National Technology Support Center in Greensboro, North Carolina. Eric, the floor is yours to introduce today's topic and our guest presenters.
Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for calling in and joining us this afternoon. Today's webinar topic is Internal Review Compositor Familiarization and Preparation for the Conservation Practice Documents Document Management System. Bill Reck, National Environmental Engineer, will first be providing an overview and background of the Conservation Practice Documents Document Management System, or CPD DMS. Following, Peter Robinson, Water Management Engineer at the West National Technology Support Center, will then provide information and guidance on what an internal review compositor is and how they will interact with the Conservation Practice Documents Document Management System. Please add your questions to the question and answer pod in Adobe Connect, and following both presentations, we will have a Q&A session. With that, Bill, would you please begin?
Thanks, Eric. Nationalizing Conservation Practice Documents Internal Review Compositor Training. Wow, what a mouthful. Okay, let's get started. So, some of you may remember, for the last few years, there's been some discussion of this whole nationalizing of standards, and what is that about? And we've had some presentations in the past, but I wanted to take a few minutes and just bring everybody up to speed. I know there's some new folks that haven't seen this before in terms of what are we talking about when we say Conservation Practice Documents Document Management System. So this project started in October of 2012. Former Chief Dave White, he had a vision of trying to move more staff time to the field office for interactions with producers. Some of you may recall the 90% solution projects. This project was one of those projects that got started. We got together in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2012 and started looking at what could we do from a conservation practice standard standpoint to lessen our burden with maintaining conservation practice standards. And what we quickly figured out was that it wasn't just standards, it was also a lot of other associated documents. Many of you will remember, you may recall Wayne Bogovich, he used to talk about the $20 million project, and that was this project. And the $20 million came about as a calculation of how many FTEs we could save if we were to share some of the burden amongst ourselves in terms of creating and maintaining our practice standards, as well as many of the other documents that are associated with conservation practice standards. So we started out defining the problem, and we quickly came to the conclusion that states can spend a significant amount of time revising and improving standards once the national standard comes out. And there was also a number of other documents that are associated with practice standards that also can take a significant amount of time. And there was a lot of duplication of effort from state to state on these documents. And we saw there was a significant potential time savings if we create a shared process. We also met in Raleigh, North Carolina for a reason, and that is because that's where CDSI, that core group, was at the time. And we wanted to dovetail into their process, because we knew that down the road the CDSI process would be needing documents in their system that they're going to be feeding to the field. So we wanted to make sure that anything that we did had a synergy with CDSI, and that's still our goal today. So when you talk about conservation practice documents, the document management system, here are what we're trying to do. We're creating an online tool for editing, managing, documenting conservation practice standards and associated documents. We wanted the ability to create those documents and still be customized by states. That was, initially one of the rumors that got started was that we were going to nationalize standards and you wouldn't be able to edit these documents at the state level anymore. That's not the case. We recognized early on that whatever process we come up with still has to allow states to be able to edit and modify all these documents, because we recognize that standards have to change at the state level to adapt to state law and local conditions, and the same thing with those other associated documents. But we did want to see us create a template which could standardize the look and feel of these different documents across the agency. Because as it is right now, if you were to look at many of the different states and many of the different common documents from state to state, what you'll find is a different format, a different look to each one of those documents. So we wanted to create a document template that would be easy to use and create that standardized look and feel, a professional look and feel across the agency. So we started out with conservation practice standards. We started working on the standard template even before we got money and contractors, vendors, to start working on this new tool for us. We changed to a single column format in order to meet 508 compliance, and created a new, better public-facing standard look and feel document. We recognize that there are many other documents that are also associated with practice standards, and we wanted to take them into consideration, and we have a plan to implement many of these documents within this system. Things like implementation requirements. That is actually a document that was came out of that October 2011 process. Specifications, statements of work, operation and maintenance requirements, design notes, checkout requirements, CPE, practice overview sheets, and others, are examples of some of those documents that are used from state to state. So, as a group, we looked at some of the features that we wanted to see in our new system. And some of the things we wanted were, if you looked, there weren't very many, some people called them job sheets, some people called them other things, but now we call them implementation requirements for our engineering practices. And so we wanted to create a tool that could better handle, the engineering side needs. We wanted to be able to have multiple approval and certification blocks that could be fillable when these documents are created. We wanted to be able to create documents that had not just at the practice level, but at a subcategory level. And as an example of what that means, if you look at the waste storage facility practice, you can have multiple kinds of waste storage facilities that are very different from one to the next. An embankment pond is different from a dry stack, is different from a tank. And so we wanted to be able to create subcategories of these documents so that you could, at a state level, if you had dry stacks and tanks, you could create different templates, different starting points for each one of those subcategories. We wanted to have linkage with existing planning and design tools where we can. We wanted to be able to take into account our archiving needs for our previous versions of state and national standards by year. We wanted a process that could better improve our flow of how we do interims right now, as well as variances, also for that matter. We wanted it to make it a little easier for when it's time to go from one version of a standard to a next version of a standard, for states to be able to see what changes did I make last time, and then be able to have a process that allows them to decide, do I need those additions again, and make that an easier process on states, and still maintain public access to our documents. FOTG is will still be a need, but we may want to store these documents in some other manner, for something like CDSI to use. So this is a process in motion. We're not to the end point. We're still moving along, and so we're not positive where we're going to end up, but we are. These are some of the things that we are working towards. Today we're going to talk about one particular role in our new process. We've gotten our first deliverable from our consultant, and that is a process for revision of standards at a national level, and we're currently piloting that process. One of the steps in the review process of a national standard is our internal review. Right now, that is done. Emil Horvath sends out an email to everyone and says, here are some standards, go review them, and when you're done, upload them to a certain website. Now, with this new process, we're going to, it'll be very much the same, and Peter's going to go through this process for us, very much the same, but different. In order to get access to the software, we had to give people a role. And because we're buying a limited number of licenses this first year, we limited the number of, we call them internal review compositors. It's just the name of the role. We call them IRCs. We wanted to limit that to 2 per state in order to limit the number of licenses. As we move along, next year when we get to the point where states will begin to have a state process for internal review of state standards, that number of licenses is going to go up. So we'll have more flexibility in who can go through this process of providing and coordinating the review of states. We'll still want just one person from a state making comments. We still want a state to gather all their comments together in one place. We don't want comments from 100 different individuals, but we will have flexibility in terms of who that person can be. So our national revision workflow has changed slightly. It's pretty much the same as what it was. We've added some steps for a quality review step, and but we still have an internal review step, just like we used to have, and that's what this step is. The internal review people are involved with that internal review step. Our IRCs provide comments on the national standard. It's an internal review. They coordinate the review amongst them, amongst the state or centers. Combine all the comments into one place, into one file, and upload it to Quark. That's our system. Right now, we sent out a national bulletin and basically said, as a default, all SRCs and state conservation engineers are IRCs. However, if you want to designate somebody else on your staff to be that person, that's fine. We have a process for doing that. We've already had a number of you make some changes, and if you decide that you want to change who you want to do that, there's a way to do that. But the reviews will still be 45 days, just like they used to be. A little bit about our timeline. This process has started with our vendor, and right now we're piloting the National Conservation Practice Standard Review process. That's what we're currently at. Vendors are beginning to work on the state process for review and editing and documenting of state conservation practice standards. And this includes templates and permissions, as well as a process for variance requests inside the system and interim requests inside the system. And we expect delivery of that sometime this summer. So we'll start piloting that soon after it's delivered. The next phase after that will be expanding our proposed national and state other templates for other documents like implementation requirements, operation and maintenance requirements, specs, etc. We've already got a few other templates in the system for some very simple, easy to enter documents like statement of work and practice overview sheets. Those are already in the system, and some of our national level folks are have access to those. The next after that is, okay, when are we going to have field level usage? Well, after we get the documents, the tool will basically be able to create a PDF. And so you will be able to use those as soon as you create them. So theoretically, in the same time frame, February, March 2008, you can begin to take those documents and distribute them to your state folks as you see fit, or upload them to EFOTG or however you want to do it. We're not sure when CDSI will begin to serve these documents. That hasn't been decided yet, and we're not sure exactly how completely that's going to occur. I will tell you that right now we are working with the vendor to see if we can take these documents and automatically upload them into your EFOTG. That's likely going to require some changes to EFOTG, and that's still, like I said, that's a work in progress. Some of you may have seen this before, but I wanted to give you a little bit of flavor on what it is that we see in these documents and why are we moving in this direction. Smart documents will allow us to take information and from a national level document and automatically populate it into a state level document, or state level tweaks and automatically for the local level. The idea would be that we would have blocks of information in these templates that would come from, say, a CDSI type of application, which would automatically populate things like your producer information and your field office information based on information that's already been entered into the system. Other blocks of text would come from your state level templates, and then other blocks would be local site-specific information that field office level folks would enter. That's our goal. So that tells you a little bit about kind of the history of the project and where we're going and our timeline. Right now, this training is about internal review compositors, and next up, Peter Robinson, the water management engineer for the West National Technology Support Center, who is on our training team, is going to walk you through the steps that an internal review compositor has to take. We have many folks on our team. We have We have a number of state engineers and state resource cons, folks that are involved with the National Conservation Practice Standards Subcommittee also are involved in this group. So, that group is moving forward, and this project, I think that a lot of people are very excited about where we're going to end up. It has a lot of potential. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter.
Thanks, Bill. So my section of this training is to explain the role and the process that the internal review compositors are going to use. So first thing is IRC. That's a new acronym you're probably not familiar with, but IRC obviously is Internal Review Compositor. Who are these people? As Bill was mentioning, by default, each state conservation engineer and each state resource conservationist was given this role. If you look in the Adobe Connect pods, we have a pod which is called Today's Link, and there is a SharePoint link there. If you click on that link, and you don't have to do it now, but if you were to click on that link, you would find in that folder that would open up a IRC Excel file. The file name is IRC, and that has the list of all the internal review compositors. So if you don't see your name there and would like it to be there, then you can add your name at the bottom of the list. Also, if you do that, please contact Bill Reck and inform him that you were able to do that, just so that Bill is aware that there's been a change in that list. And as Bill mentioned, the reason we're doing this is because those people will have permissions to, or the license to use the software. So I kind of got ahead of myself about it's possible for the default IRC in a state to hand off that responsibility to someone else, and that's perfectly okay. Just make sure that you go to that Excel file, add your name or someone else's name, and then inform Bill Reck. All right, so just to make sure we're all on the same page, this process deals with something very, very focused, which is the state comments to national standards. Well, you're all familiar with how we currently solicit and put together state comments to national standards, and there is a new way of doing it. The old way was pretty simple, and the new way is also pretty simple. So if at the end of this training you're a little bit confused, you should blame that on the presenter and not on the process. It just means that I was not able to convey this simple process over a webinar. But I think I'm going to be able to do that, and I've broken it down now into basically the roles and the steps that you're going to take. All right, so this really hasn't changed that much, but what the IRC is going to do is we're going to distribute a draft national practice standard to the state specialists and others who might be interested in submitting comments for the national practice standards, and then collect those comments and upload them into a Quark tool. Now, in the past, you might have had this role and all you did was collect the comments and send them off via email or upload them to an FTP site. So the new step is you're going to upload them into the Quark tool. And if you are an IRC, you will have the licensing required in order to be able to access that tool. All right, I'm not expecting you to read this table. There's the old way on the left and the new way. Those are the old ways that we used to solicit and collect and then send off the state comments to the national standards. But if you just look at the items in bold, those are the things that have changed, and they're pretty minor changes. You don't see that much in bold in either the old way or the new way because there really hasn't been too many changes. But we thought it was important to go through these changes so you're not flustered the first time or two you have to do this. So I've broken up into 3 steps, and I'm going to go through those 3 steps, and there are sometimes a couple parts to the steps, but the first step is you will receive an email. Now, in the past, you've received an email from the National Practice Standard Review Coordinator. This new email is going to be automatically generated from the Quark tool. And also, the draft is going to be attached. That is a draft of the National Practice Standard that is under review. So that's not really a step that you're going to have to take. You're just going to receive an email. Now the email is going to look something like this, and I have 4 arrows, and let's go and look at the arrows from top to bottom. The blue arrow on the top indicates that there is a attachment to this email, and that would be the National Draft Practice, or the draft for the National Practice Standard. The second, the orange arrow, gives you the deadline. Now, just as Bill mentioned, there's still a 45-day deadline from the time the IRC, the Internal Review Compositor, gets this email until we'd like all the comments from the states back. The third arrow, the red arrow, is a team lead for the development of or revision of this National Practice Standard. So if you have any specific questions, you can contact that person. And then that fourth green arrow is a link that will bring you directly to the Quark tool, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So those are 4 things that are pretty basic, but I think are important in this email that the internal review compositors are going to get when a new national standard is available for review by the states. So the second part of step 1 is to save the draft as an MS Word document. Now, if you looked, in fact, I'll just go back and when you look at that, the attachment, that attachment is a PDF file. All right. Now, what we'd like you to do is we'd like you to save it as an MS Word document. Now, if you look at the figure on the right, that's one kind of transformer. It transforms a red BMW into a death-dealing robot. Unfortunately, that's not really what this webinar is about. Our webinar is about another kind of transformation, another kind of transformer, which is transforming a PDF document into an MS Word document. Now, for better or for worse, Adobe has released a new Adobe Acrobat, and their methodology for doing this has changed slightly. And you can read these instructions. We also have a quick reference guide that goes over the methods to do this. But here's my suggestion. When you have the PDF open, just go to the file and either look on Save As, which was the old way of doing it, or Export to, which is the new, that is to say the Adobe Acrobat Pro DC methodology for saving a PDF file as a Word document. And it is fairly straightforward. You'll find that if you spend 10 seconds looking for those commands, as long as you start with the file, you will be able to save it as a Word document, and you would save it to wherever you want on your hard drive or however you save documents off of an email. So that was step 1. Step 2 hasn't really changed, all right? Step 2 is you, as the IRC, are going to distribute this file, this Word file, to the state specialists and any other people in your state that you want to get comments from that national practice standard. Now, the old way is to just turn on track changes in MS Word. You distribute, you collect those comments, and you combine them into one file. Just as an aside, there is a different way. It's called co-authoring. It's a feature of SharePoint 2013. I didn't want to spend any time talking about co-authoring and what it involves, but if you look at in today's handout, there is a quick reference guide, and there is about a page of information about what co-authoring is and how you can do it. I personally find it to be a superior method than to send out a file via email to 3 or 5 or 10 recipients, but you may differ on that. But do what you want. What we're really interested in is the comments, not how you go and collect them. So step 3. Well, once you've gone in, those files have been, or excuse me, the comments have been collected and put into one MS Word document. Now it's time to send it off. So first, what we want you to do is we want you to rename the file, and we have this this naming convention. It's also in the quick reference guide. As you can see, it's going to help us, in fact, make sure that if the file does get misplaced, we're going to be able to find it quickly. So that would be the first thing, just rename the file using our naming convention. And the second thing is to upload the comments to the Quark tool. Now, this is different, and I hope it's not going to be confusing. I don't think it is actually very confusing. That link that appeared in that email at the bottom of the email that I showed, that fourth arrow, will bring you directly to the Quark tool. And in fact, it will bring you pretty close to the place where you need to place this file. So you would click on that link that's in the original email, Okay, and here's an indication, once again, it says click here, and that green arrow indicates that link. And then what will open up is the Quark tool. So the orange arrow kind of gives you an indication of where you are in the tool, and it tells you the path name. Now, I'll just go over what you're seeing on your screen. You see a home icon, then followed by that is 999. That would be the practice code. So 999 obviously is not a real practice code. You might have, say, 430 irrigation pipeline or something like that. Then the IRC training, that would be, in fact, the name of the practice standard. And then finally 2017. So that gives you an indication of where you are. And then you'll see there's two ways of uploading this file. One is you see that file called the folder called state comments. Now, my inclination is when I see a folder like that, and if I know where I have a file that needs to go there, I click on it. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and it would work. There's another method, though, to get to the same thing. On the left-hand side of the window, there's a list of all the practice standards, and you would scroll down till you get to 999. These are in numerical order, so they should be fairly easy to find. You can see that triangle that opens up the folder. It would open up so you would see visibly the 2017 folder. Within that is a folder for state comments, and then you would click on that, and you would be in the right place again. So here we have that path, all right, highlighted by that orange arrow. And now when you actually open up, either way, either by clicking on the state comments icon or using the list on the left, you would now see that state comments and you're ready to go. So that blue arrow, that blue check mark in the left-hand side, that's kind of my way of saying, hey, you're there. Okay, you're not going to actually see the blue check mark to tell you you're in the right place, but that's an indication that you are in the right place, and now you're ready to upload that file. Now, this is where I think we can, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes when I get to this step, I say, okay, what do I do now? Well, here's my hint. Keep calm and check in. All right, so up in the upper left-hand corner, you see a button. It's called Check In Other. And I've been using the term upload. The Quark tool uses the term check-in. So we're going to ask you to check in. If you're looking for an upload button, you're not going to find it, but you will find the check-in button. So when you get to this step and you're a little bit flummoxed because you don't see what to do, just remember, keep calm and check in. And then you can see this window opens. You're looking at the window right now. It says Check In Other. You'll see a Browse button. You browse to the location on your hard drive or wherever you stored that folder, that file which contains your state's comments, and you would browse to it and then say OK. And then you get another window, and you're good to go. You say OK. That's it. So you've completed those 3 steps. Now, obviously, I just went over this in about 15 minutes. That collection comments or collection period lasts for 45 days, but hopefully the things that as far as sharing or not sharing, but uploading, that is checking in this file that your state has created, is going to be pretty simple. All right, that pretty much concludes my presentation. That quick reference guide, that is, it's called the CPD DMS Quick Reference. It's in the Adobe Connect pod called Today's Handouts. You can download that. The last page gives you the list of all the people in the training group for the CPD DMS. Please contact us if you have any questions at all. We'll try to we'll try to solve whatever issues come up. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Eric Fleming.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you as well, Bill. Looks like you did a fairly good job with the presentations because we have only one question at this point. The question is, lots of states have PDF docs for job sheet/IR documents, which include drop-down menus to make filing the form easier. Will national templates include those types of enhancements? The question was answered by Casey earlier. It says the actual feel and functionality of the SMART documents are still in the discussion/development phase. State input is critical for establishing the need. Bill, would you care to expand on that answer at all?
Yeah, and we're still working out what is the software capable of. We have heard from states that we have really good tools and we want to be able to keep that functionality and not go backwards. We have heard you, okay? We understand that, and that is our goal. We're not going to be mandating that you switch over documents right away. I will tell you that at some point down the road, we're going to have CDSI, and it's looking for a way to use the document in its process, and we're going to make sure that our documents can do that. So we're not going to be doing that for other documents. So there's going to come a time where you're going to want to switch over in order to take advantage of the CDSI capabilities. In terms of what capabilities we're going to have for things like drop-down menus, like Eric said, and Casey said, we're not sure yet how much flexibility, how much we're going to be able to do. The vendors have said that they're going to be able to meet our needs, but if you've ever dealt with programmers before and you've dealt with that communication back and forth, it's a process. So we're going to do the best that we can, and I think that the tool that we have is very flexible. But we'll see. We may have we may pick up some functionality, some new functionality over the way that we're doing things. We may lose some functionality in some other places. Hopefully, as a whole, we're going to end up with a tool that gives us a better look and feel and experience in the future than we have today. And I think all the people on the team would agree that that is our goal, and that is what we are pushing towards.
Okay, thank you, Bill. The next, I guess, actually comment would be, remember that the SRC or the SCE must approve the comments before they are submitted. I would say at this point, in most cases, or if not, well, many cases at least, the IRC is already the SCE or the SRC. But in other cases, yes, please remember that those comments should be reviewed prior to submission.
Eric, why don't you talk about our plan for a sample standard so that they can get into the tool and see it?
Sure, Bill. As you saw during Peter Robinson's presentation, there was I guess I would call it a dummy collection that was created with the code number 999 internal review comments, or IRC comments. I don't recall exactly the name of the folder. It was a dummy standard that has been set up under the 999 collection with a 2017 folder. And within that is a sample standard, a dummy standard that in the next several days after the vendor and CTS have fully established the link between the licenses and the eAuth accounts, and we are sure that all of the IRCs have the appropriate permissions in place, we are going to use the CPD DMS system to send out that dummy standard for internal review. So each of you should be receiving that probably first to middle part of next week with that attached PDF file of the 999 internal review dummy standard, and the date for the review period, and the link to send you directly back to the system. And with that, there's a couple points. One question has been asked is, what happens if you accidentally delete that email? Well, my suggestion would be, first and foremost, you check with the other IRC from your state, whether it's the SCE or the SRC or vice versa, and just ask them to forward you that email. Secondly, if you recall who the national discipline lead for that standard was, or the national team lead that was listed, you can contact that person and they should be able to send you a copy of that email as well. And then if all else fails and you've accidentally deleted that email and you can't get a copy of it conveniently, at that point you can actually log into the system directly and you can navigate through the left-hand side, the file tree that Peter was showing you, and go to the standard number, the year, and go to the comment folder and upload that way. So there's multiple methods, but first and easiest would be to check with the other IRC from your state. Okay, we had another question. How will state additions / changes to the national standard be shown? And I'm going to take a stab at this, and then Bill or Peter, if you want to add further information, please follow me. At this point, that is exactly what is being developed by the contractor, is this process for the states to modify the national standard and be able to adopt it at the state level. And the architecture right now is such that there's going to be multiple viewing windows where you have the ability to see the new national standard and or the old state standard. And then you have another window / pane that is the new state standard that's under development, so that you have the ability to compare and contrast as you're doing that work. And once again, that's under development, and that's at least the concept as it stands today. Bill, if you care to further.
Yes. The good thing is we'll have that compare tool in there. The bad news is that compare tool, you don't have anything in the system for your old standard. So the first time you review and update the standard, you won't have that. You'll have to go back to your old standard and look at those differences yourself, because our tool won't have your old standard in the system to be able to do that comparison. At least I don't think so. But as we go forward, as we move forward in the future, when you come to a new revision, you'll bring up it'll automatically bring up your last revision of the state standard and show highlighted sections of where your changes to the standard were last go round. That'll be in one window. And then you'll have another window with the new current national standard revision. So you'll be able to easily scan down the document, see where those changes were, and decide whether you want to put them from your old revision into the new revision. That's the mock-ups of how the vendor is proposing to make the tool.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, the next question we have is, why not just provide a Word document instead of a PDF to start with? And the answer to that is, we have requested that numerous times, and unfortunately the current version of the Quark software cannot support this. And we're hopeful that the next version of the software will be able to. But that is, I guess, an enhancement / improvement that we have requested. Luckily, it's not too terrible of a process to make the conversion initially.
They actually thought they would have it by now, but the people who make cork are running a little behind on creating that. So we're hopeful that that'll be around soon.
Okay, next question. Will states be able to share their state changes to national standards and their state level with their state level partners? At this point in time, there is not going to be any licenses issued to state level partners outside of NRCS. So any sharing of that material to external non-NRCS personnel would have to occur outside of the Quark system.
And what that means is you print out a PDF or create a Word document and send it out, just as you would do now. But they won't go into the Quark. They won't be able to get into the Quark tool.
And as far as sharing those state-level changes with adjacent states, NRCS personnel will have the ability to see that material in the Quark system read-only. They will not be able to modify another state's materials, but they should be able to see it. Okay, next question. In cases where the state standard is more restrictive than the national, in consultation with the State Technical Committee, will this documentation be stored in Quark? Yes, those state changes will be saved in Quark. Any additions needed, Bill?
I'm wondering if that's the question that they actually meant to ask. Yeah, they may have been trying to get towards variances and how that'll work. The system, in terms of variances, the way that we're requesting the vendor to do it is you would create a request inside of the system that would go to the national office and be routed to the directors and discipline leads as appropriate. They would respond, and you'd get the response back. And that variance request document would stay in the documentation files within the Quark system, so that, and here's the advantage of that. Then the next time the standard gets revised, what would happen is the national person who would be doing the revision would get reminders. Hey, Illinois and Texas had variances on this standard. You need to consider those when you're doing your next update. And so they do a national revision. When the states then come to do their revision for the new standard, the states will get a reminder, hey, you had a variance on this last time. You need to decide, do you still need your variance, or will you need to apply for the variance again? So there'll be those reminders as a part of the update process. That's the direction we're going.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And next question is, if Word is the only acceptable file type and MS Word does not support drop-down list, and how do you expect states to have field-friendly job sheets? Well, I think first of all, at this point, the Quark tool can only export a draft version of the standard as an Adobe PDF, not MS Word. There's additional functionality within the Quark software that allows for smart document creation and supports some other features. I think the key point about the state-friendly job sheets is that portion of the software is being developed as, well, I guess that portion of the software is actually in future development phase right now, and it's still under discussion as to exactly how some of those items are going to be addressed. Bill, can you please fill in my gaps?
The Quark tool has a lot of the same, in terms of creating documents. It's got a lot of the same, most of the same tools that are available in MS Word. So, we're hopeful that we'll be able to, to handle that. But we're not, we're not Quark experts at this point. So it's hard for Eric and I and Peter to know exactly what the capabilities of Quark are. We have seen enough to know this. It's different. And there's advantages there because of that difference that will be advantageous and make certain things better. There are also limitations, and we're not sure what exactly those limitations are going to be yet. So it's a work in progress. As we move forward, this document management system is the way that everything is moving in that direction. So in order to keep up with technology and in order to take advantage of this document sharing capability, that's the direction that we have to move.
Thank you, Bill.
Did that answer the question? Because I may have misunderstood.
Well, I believe it answers the question. I think we're really at a stage, though, where the documents, the smart documents that we're envisioning for field office use is still on down the road. And we're still at the piloting the national standard development phase of this right now.
Yeah,
so
some of those,
concept,
right. Some of those will be like, we'll be creating like fillable forms. And, in PDFs. And some of those fillable items will be able to be pulled in from, other online databases that automatically will fill in some of those pieces. But again, CDSI is not there yet. That's there down the road. We're trying to, we're moving in a parallel path, trying to keep in mind where they're going, but we want ours to be a standalone as well, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Bill. All right, next question. Will the system be capable of adding tables and figures to the standards or just text? I believe Quark software has the capability for importing tables and figures and other types of graphics. So it should be able to support stuff beyond just text.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point if you have if you're creating a document like an IR and you want to embed other PDFs in there, if you want to embed, other fact sheets or helper documents into that, it can handle embedding other documents within documents. So, yes, the answer to this question is yes, you'll be able to add tables and figures. Figures and equations too, because there's an equation editor as well, just like MS Word has. So yes, I don't think pictures are, well, I'm not sure because the figure is kind of a picture. If you look at the current template for a standard as it sits right now, there is an optional picture to go in the standard, and I think we are removing that option as we move forward. So you won't have a picture in the standard, and that would be something that you'd get more from the practice overview document. But that was a decision that has been made and moved through the NCPSS, that subcommittee.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next question. will this process also be used for new interim standards?
Yes. I mean, that's a pretty simple answer. I mean, right now we're piloting. When we get through the pilot, the interim standard process, what we've asked the vendor to give us is a process where, very much like a variant, their processes will be similar. You would submit a request for an interim standard. It would go to the directors and the discipline leads that would be responsible for that interim. They would be able to respond back, and it would go back to you as you get your answer. The only difference between the process in the future and the process we have now is we know that the tool will capture those, will archive them, and will add reminders so that in the case of interims, if you have an interim, you'll get a reminder, hey, you have a report due on this interim. And so there, that will be a part of the system. It'll be very similar to what you have now. It'll just be a better method of control of the process, as well as documenting and archiving of those things. Another advantage will be that it will be easier for us to find interims from other states, create reports that show what interims are out there and where they are at in the process, so that if you want to know, hey, this interim's been around, are they creating a national standard for that? There'll be an interim report that you'll be able to generate that will tell you where these things are in the process. At least that's what we've asked the vendor for, and the vendor has said, yes, we can do that. Same thing with standard status. If you want to know what's the status of a standard that's in the revision process, we'll be able to pull a report, and the report will tell you this standard is in draft 1, the standard is in draft 3, this standard is ready for the next Federal Register release, and you'll have a report that tells you where all those standards are in the process.
As far as the interim standard, I would add that in order for some of that functionality to occur, the interim standard is going to have to be developed within the Quark system. So that is a slight caveat. And I think at this point, that's all the questions we currently have. We do intend to take these questions and develop a question and answer document and post to the SharePoint that's showing up in today's links as a Q&A file. And please remember that the quick reference guide that should step you through the process that Peter described is on that SharePoint site as well. And as soon as we get the go-ahead from the contractor and CTS on the permissions and the linkage to the EOF accounts for all the IRC users, we are going to move that $9.99 IRC dummy standard through Quark system so that it will generate the email. So you should be seeing that email within, hopefully by the middle of next week. You might go ahead and check out the SharePoint site and verify on the Excel spreadsheet that the appropriate people for your state are listed as the IRCs. And if you do not receive an email by the end of next week from the Quark system, and you are on that list, please let Bill Reck, myself, Peter Robinson, or one of the people listed at the back of the quick reference guide as trainers, please let one of us know so that we can follow up on that. Okay, I think with that, Casey, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Eric, Bill, and Peter, for your time and effort for the presentation today. Thanks to all the participants for joining in. This concludes our presentation. Have a good day.